Hey, everybody. I do apologize for the false start to the previous video. That was because we had some issues with the audio. The microphone decided not to work. And unfortunately, YouTube doesn't give you any way of checking that the microphone is working until you hit go live. And unfortunately, this time it didn't work. So I'm hoping that you can hear me. This is a bit of an impromptu video. The topic, obviously, is it buyback time? Is it time to get the Chevrolet Bolt EV buyback activated for the 2017 two Bolt EVs that my partner and I own? One of them is Artemis, my red Chevrolet Bolt EV. The other one being Orion, the black 2017 Chevrolet Bolt Premier that my wife Kate purchased used. Now, if you watched this channel a couple of weeks ago, well, in fact, a week ago, you'll know that we did a live stream discussing the what now with Chevrolet. And the issue that we have run into, namely that certain 2017 through 2019 Chevrolet Bolt EVs, basically all 2017, 18, and some 2019. As far as I understand it, Bolt EVs have an issue with the battery pack. That means under a certain set of circumstances, the battery can, I believe, go into a thermal runaway and cause a fire with the car. Now, there's only been a handful of Bolt EVs that have caught fire. I think there's about a dozen now, so about 12 around the world that I am aware of who've caught fire, and that is both the Bolt EV and also the Opel Ampera EV. And so that problem occurred about a year ago now, and so General Motors pushed out an emergency firmware update. And the purpose of that emergency firmware update was to restrict the maximum state of charge for affected vehicles so that they could not go into the 90% state of charge range. And so what we decided to do at the time, both my wife and I, as Bolt EV owners, was to go, okay, GM has said it's going to be working on this permanent solution, and we'll take the temporary update. We'll have that applied to our cars, which we did. And then we, at that point, waited for the software update to be applied, the permanent software update, which General Motors rolled out earlier this year. We had the permanent software update added. That removed the restriction on the maximum state of charge, and it came with some new algorithms that were designed to make sure that the car could monitor the battery and notify both the owners and General Motors of an issue before it became a problem. Now, the issue with this, unfortunately, is that since that update has been rolled out, two Chevrolet Bolt EVs have caught fire after they had the battery software update applied. And that has left myself and many other Bolt EV owners curious as to what happens next. And we were all kind of watching the news. We were all paying attention to it, I think. But then last week, General Motors came out with a statement which basically said, do not park indoors after you finish charging. Do not charge overnight. So those two pieces of advice basically betray the fear, I think, that GM has at a corporate level, that there is clearly something wrong with the battery packs. And as a precautionary measure, I think they would rather that we had our cars parked away from things that might catch fire, and also that we don't charge our cars overnight. And so we've been talking about this. I know Winter has been talking about it with me. He is currently on his road trip. So hello, Winter, on your road trip. But also we are my wife and I have been talking about it because we have 2 Chevrolet Bolts. My wife's Bolt has 94,000 miles on it, nearly 100,000 miles on it. My car has 60,000 miles on it. Winter's just jumped into the chat room, so I'm sure he's going to correct me if I say anything wrong here. He said a supercharger in an undisclosed location, closer to the east coast of the US than he is the west at the moment, but I think let's just leave it at that. And Winter had a buyback offer for his car, the 2017 Chevrolet Bolt EV that he has. We all own 2017 Bolts. Now, the only comfort here is that, as far as I'm aware, none of the fires have occurred in 2017 Bolts, only older ones. But obviously, that is still a challenge. And so we are, I think, all slightly worried about driving and using our cars. Now, as long as we keep the cars between 20% and say 80% state of charge, or 30 and 70%, I don't think there's going to be a problem because of the way that lithium ion batteries work. They have a very, very gentle discharge curve. So old-fashioned lead acid batteries, when you discharged them, their voltage dropped pretty quickly. And over time, as the battery became less full, the voltage drop was pretty steep. Lithium ion batteries tend to hold their voltage throughout the majority of the state of charge. They'll go up a little bit at the top when you're charging them, and then they'll drop off a cliff at the bottom end. And so if you keep your battery in that middle zone, you're generally pretty good. Now, GM, other companies that make EVs, Tesla, everybody, they build in buffers at the top and the bottom of the pack that you don't see. And the top and the bottom buffers are there to allow those batteries to never go into the drop off a cliff zone and get high and charge too much zone. But obviously there is something wrong with the battery balancing in these vehicles, because it means, please excuse me a second. Sorry, just had a heart thing happen. That's never happened on air before. Oh, that's fun. I get, because in case you don't know, I have long QT. It's a heart condition. It's genetic, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I get palpitations and weird things happen to my heart. And normally I just have to pause what I'm doing because it's very distracting. Anyway, where was I? Right. So the batteries in most modern EVs are very carefully engineered so that the owner of the car, the user of the car, cannot take them into the danger zone either at the top or the bottom of the state of charge. And I suspect that in GM's case, something is happening that is allowing those batteries to go into those danger zones, or there's something wrong mechanically within the pack. This is the more likely one, that there's something mechanically wrong with the actual cell design or with the actual pack design that's causing those cells to go into a state of either imbalance or thermal runaway, which is what causes the battery. No, for those of you who are asking, yes, I am okay. No, I do not have a pacemaker. I have something called an implanted loop recorder. I don't need a pacemaker. I don't need an ICD, but it does sometimes mean that I do have those little kind of moments. It doesn't hurt. It's just like it feels like my heart's racing. And sometimes it happens. It's happened on stage before. It's happened when I've been performing before. Never happened on a live stream before. So there are some outtakes of me filming with a script where I just have to pause for a few seconds just to go, okay, where was I? Right, here we go. It's less of a problem when I'm doing something that's more automatic, like driving, which feels weird, but anyway, I'm fine. So someone called it a heart fart. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's like a heart fart. All right. So, to that end, my wife and I chatted over the weekend about where we go from here. Lots of people have had buybacks. They've gone to GM and they've gone, I'm not happy about this. There's something wrong with my car's battery pack. Something potentially wrong. Perhaps is a better way of putting it. Something's potentially wrong with my car's battery pack. I am not happy about the options that have been offered me. I want you to buy the car back, or I want you to give me a new battery pack. And GM has said, okay, we'll buy the car back. I'm going to go over the reasons why that's a smarter move for GM in a second. But essentially, what's happened is that a lot of people have gone back to GM and said, we love our bolts, but we don't like what's happening with the battery, and we're not impressed with what you're doing. And some people have used that money. They've sold their car back to General Motors for an equivalent amount of money to what they paid for it, minus some depreciation based on the number of miles they've done. So some people have got the original price they paid for the car minus an amount based on the number of miles they've done. But unlike a lease where you pay like 50 cents per mile over your lease, the amount of money that people are getting back is much, much better than what it would be if they tried to sell the car on the open market, and they're ending up with a little extra cash for their trouble. So they're not getting necessarily the full amount back, but they're maybe getting some of that money back. Some people are using that money to then go and buy a brand new Bolt, the new 21 Bolts or the 21 Bolt EUVs, or even the outgoing 20 Bolts. There are still a few of those sitting on dealer lots. The difference between the cars that were affected, the 17s to the 19s, or some of the 19s, and later cars is that they have battery packs made by LG and GM combined in the US, as opposed to the earlier cars, which all feature battery packs that were made in South Korea by LG Energy there. And of course, Hyundai, however you want to pronounce it, has had issues with its LG Energy battery packs, and is at the moment going through a recall campaign where it's replacing all of the battery packs on Konas worldwide. And again, I'm going to explain in a moment why I think it's less advantageous for GM to do that than just buy the cars back. Some people are getting buyback offers. Some of you have reached out and said, hey, I want to tell you about my experience. Thank you very much for offering. We've been inundated with people wanting to talk about it. And as a bit of a side, I know some people are kind of frustrated that they've been reaching out to the channel and they've not been able to get an immediate response. Just so that you know, we have approximately a gazillion, maybe that's a slight exaggeration. We get a lot of emails every day. We get a lot of messages every day on Facebook and Twitter and through YouTube, all the comments. And we have to try and respond to as many as we possibly can, but it's impossible for us to respond to every single one. We just don't have enough hours in the day, and also to create content. So if you've reached out and we've not responded, please be patient. If we can, we will respond, but we cannot respond to every single person who reaches out. I'm sorry. All right, so where was I? So some people are getting buybacks, and some people are doing what's called an MSRP swap, where they reach out to GM, and GM is like, okay, we will agree to swap your car for a car of a similar value to what you paid for your car. So if you paid $40,000 for your Bolt originally, they will allow you, if you give them back your Bolt, they'll allow you to spend $40,000 on another new car through your local dealership. And there are reasons, again, why I think this is probably the direction that I think GM will go. Now, Winter is saying, and I want to cover this, Winter said that his offer from GM was only $800 less than he paid, even though he bought his car used. He did pass on the offer, and he says he's regretting it now. Obviously, we were just about to drive his car across the country. I think that might have had something to do with it. But he's also said he's put in a request to explore another buyback. But anecdotally, from other owners in his situation, GM seems unreceptive to folk who turned down a buyback offer previously. Winter's got a slightly different situation because he explored a buyback before we knew about these secondary fires, that the new round of fires that had happened after the software update. So I would argue, I'm not a lawyer, don't play one and blah, blah, blah. I would argue that he might have more of a leg to stand on, because things have gotten worse since he went, no, okay, we'll see how the software update was. And I don't want to speak for Winter, but I believe he decided to turn down the buyback offer because he wanted to see if that software update actually really did fix things. So what happens to the vehicles GM buys back? That's a really good question. So I'm not an expert here, but as I understand it, from what happened with Volkswagen and the Dieselgate. When a company buys back a vehicle for an obvious defect, documented defect, which obviously in the case of the Dieselgate was that the cars were not compliant with emissions. What happens is the automaker buys the car back. That car is either then goes through internal recycling, or it is sold at auction. Once it has been fixed, it's sold back into the automotive marketplace. But I believe at that point it is branded a salvage vehicle, because it's a vehicle that was bought back, had a defect, and then that defect is what's needed to be fixed. It's been fixed. So that vehicle had a serious defect, which meant it wasn't safe to be used on the road, which I believe makes it a salvage vehicle. And then they fix it and put it back on the market. It's slightly different, I believe. If you've had the update applied, they give you the battery swap, then I think the car avoids getting that salvage title. But don't quote me on that. So we'll see. And Winter's just corrected me. The final recall fix had already come out when he turned down BuyBack, which made passing seem like a better plan, because at that point there was no documented fires. And I remember making a video when I said there's no documented fires after the recall software update has been applied, and that's why we weren't concerned at the time, my wife and I. Now that's changed, and so this is where we are right now. So where are we personally? So right now, two cars. We have a 2017 Chevrolet Bolt LT and a 2017 Bolt Premier. The Premier has 94,000 and some on. The LT has about 60,000 miles on it. Interesting. The person who responded in the chat room, put a smoke detector in your car until the ultimate fix. Either he is somebody who has the same name as one of our camera guys, or he's one of our camera guys. And if he's one of our camera guys, I love you, hun. You are funny. It's his comedic chops. I think that probably was him. So what this means is we have reached out to General Motors today. We rang the 1833 EV Chevy. That's the number that they give you. See if I can remember the number here. I'm going to give it out just for all of you in case you're curious. EV Chevy. So 382. And we were on hold. I'm waiting for my connection to reconnect. Sorry about that. That is the problem when you live in the country. We were on hold for that number for about 20-25 minutes, and then we talked to an EV concierge specialist, and I explained the situation, said, hey, we've got two 2017 Chevrolet Bolt EVs, and we are interested in how you're going to fix this. We stuck with Chevy while you told us that there was a temporary fix or a temporary restriction, and then we waited for the actual recall. We had the cars in for the recall. We did have the work carried out on our cars for the recall, and now there's been two more fires, and that's made us nervous. But what really, and I'm speaking to other Bolt EV owners, they feel the same way. What makes them worried was advice from General Motors, which it published on its website. I haven't received a letter from GM about this yet, and I haven't received an email. I've just seen it on the website. And that advice basically said, unplug your car as soon as it's done charging. Don't park it inside. Park it away from buildings and things. And don't charge overnight. Now, I brought that up with the EV concierge specialist, and she said something really weird to me, which kind of stuck in my brain. I said, well, this means we can't charge our cars up to 100%. It also means we have to park them away from the house. It means that we're not getting the full range of the car that we originally did. And it also means we have to park our cars away from our house. I pointed out that we live in the country. We have a chicken coop right next to where the cars normally charge with lots of straw in it. We live in the Pacific Northwest. There are lots of trees here, and it's been very dry. The last thing I want is to start a forest fire with my car should something nasty happen. Now, I'm going to admit, I don't think the possibility of that happening is particularly high, because my car has been super reliable. But I would rather be super cautious right now than complacent, because it doesn't cost me anything to be cautious. It could cost me a lot to be complacent. And when you're talking about electricity and sparks and fire risks and other things, generally I'm going to play it safe. All right, so there have been no other fires on bolts that have been updated other than those two recorded. But the funny thing, something else here, that people are saying, remember that Kia uses SK Innovation batteries, so that seems like a potential safer alternative. And everyone I know, there are cars with SK Innovation batteries that have not had any issues. It's only LG Energy ones. Winter says he's definitely seeing folk on Bolt owners communities who've had their cars detect a battery issue after the recall fix and end up needing a new battery without a fire happening. And that's a really good point here. For the most part, it looks like the software that GM pushed out is doing a better job of keeping cars safe than cars that didn't have the update in the first place. But the fact that there were two cars that did catch fire has made us go, that doesn't make sense. Also, the advice from GM, park outside, don't charge overnight. That was really the nail in the coffin for us. And so when I brought this up with the specialist, she said, well, you can still charge to 100%. You just have to park away from your house. And I said, well, you've said don't charge overnight, but you've told me I can charge up to 100%. That doesn't seem to vibe well with me. Obviously, charging up to 100% would, I think, put the battery in a more dangerous situation. I'm no expert, but at the same point, the don't charge up overnight makes me think that GM is worried there's a possibility that the car could fully charge and then have bad things happen overnight. So that seems sit weirdly if GM is saying, no, you can still charge up to 100%, which makes me feel a little cautious there. I don't know how we are going to ultimately end up here, but we have said that we are going to investigate the possibility of either a buyback or an MSRP swap. And that really hurts because I really love my Bolt. My Bolt has been around the US. Certainly, it's been all the way to Texas. It's been down to Las Vegas multiple times. It's been down to the Mexican border multiple times, been all the way up to the Canadian border. Someone saying, just buy a Tesla Model 3 or Model Y. And I think this is something that I feel that I do have to discuss here. Unless GM is giving full MSRP buyback on every single car, which it could do, I'll come to that in a second. Switching out for another brand is totally fine, but just telling people to, just get a Tesla is very counterintuitive and not really very helpful. The reason we don't own a Tesla right now is because they don't fit our lifestyle. They don't fit our preferences for vehicles, and that's okay. And frankly, I get really sick and tired of people kind of implying that you're not a real EV fan, or you're not really into electric vehicles, or you don't know what you're talking about if you don't subscribe to one particular car, or you don't buy one particular car. We're all different. We all have different needs, and we all have different requirements of vehicles. I like hatchbacks. I like hot hatches. That's one of the reasons why we have the Bolt, is because it packs a punch. It's got great torque. It's got decent performance for its size. It's pretty chuckable. It's not a big car. I don't like big cars. Yes, we are on the wait list for a Ford F-150 Lightning, but that's going to be more of a work truck than it is just a plaything or just a commuter vehicle, which is, I think, really where the Bolt sat. It was cheap, it was affordable, and I got a significant discount off that car when I bought it because I had a trade-in and because my car had been involved in an accident when they took it off the lorry, so it had to be fixed before they sold it. Andrew says, what preference does a Bolt fit? A hatchback, a functional hatchback that just gets the job done. I don't want bells and whistles in my cars generally. I just want a car that gets me from A to B. And has a dealer network. There's half dozen dealers within the area that I can just take my car to. I can get fixes done really quickly. And let's not forget, Teslas have had issues too with batteries. This month, we've heard of stories of Tesla Model S Plaids catching fire. There was some people have actually got cross with us for not covering it. We've just not had time to go into the story, but there's been a couple of instances of Model S Plaids catching fire while people have been driving them. And batteries are just like anything else. They can go wrong, they can be fine, and how often they go wrong and how often they're fine is a bit of a black art. What's the difference between the battery in the 2017 and the 2020? The same design? No, it's not. It's different chemistry. I don't remember exactly, but I did go to the 2020 launch event in Seattle, and it's a slightly different cell chemistry. So slightly different composition of the actual individual cells at the molecular level. And then they're arranged slightly differently, I believe, in the pack. They have different numbers of cells. No, they have the same number of cells, but they have a different chemistry, which allows them to have a higher energy density. That's, I think, what I remember from it. They're 60, I think it's either 65 or 66 kilowatt hours nominal, as opposed to the current battery for the old Bolt battery, which was 57 nominal. People say it was 60, but 60 nominal, 57 usable. So the new ones are 65 usable. Thank you, Zach. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you. He says, hot hatch for the win. I'd totally trade my 2020 LD for a Lightning, though. Much more comfortable ride, I'm sure. Bolt seats are rough for big people like me. Well, so this is where we're at, right? So we're looking at the 2021 Bolt. If we end up with an MSRP swap, I think that's probably the way we're going to go. There's been no issues involving the 2021 Bolt EVs yet. I know they're in their first year, but it's a mid-cycle refresh. And generally mid-cycle refresh cars are really super reliable because all of the tweaks that have been made are generally design tweaks, or they're engineering tweaks to iron out the kinks that happened with the first 3, 4, 5 years of production. So the 2021 Bolt LT and the LT2, which are the two options here, they are effectively on the same chassis. They've got a new interior. They've got the same battery pack as the 2020s, believe it or not. So they're made in the US, those batteries. We know that there's no issues with them. And the Bolt EUV, that's slightly different. It's basically a modified Bolt chassis. It's slightly lengthened, I think 6 inches on it. They've lengthened the chassis slightly. It has different body panels, but under the hood, there's a lot of similarity in terms of what's available in terms of power and everything else. And it's very similar. The other difference between the 2021s and the 2020s for the Bolts and also the Bolt EUVs is that the 2020 Bolts had a 6 kilowatt onboard charger, and the 2021s, both the Bolt and the Bolt EUV, come with an 11 kilowatt charger. So John says, we just completed our buyback and just bought a 2021. Net cost was just the sales tax, and that's reduced in the state of Washington. And that's a good thing. The other thing that obviously stuck in my mind, I don't know if I can show you this without letting. No. All right, I can probably do that there. That's fine. This is my vehicle registration renewal notice. It is for Artemis, my Bolt. We got it yesterday or the day before. My Bolt EVs tags are due for renewal, and I have a $466 bill to pay for re-registering my car. Now, if obviously we end up going down the buyback or the MSRP swap, I'd rather not spend $466. I know I can get my money back. It's a bit of a lengthy process, but we can do that. So that's the other reason why we're considering it. Richard says, we have a Bolt and a Model 3. We love both, but the Bolt is a great city car and errand car, so easy to park. Love the rear view mirror and the overhead parking view. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's different. People have different choices. And I think we have to remember that people have different choices and they have different experiences. And it really ticks me off. It doesn't sadden me. It just makes me cross that people see it fit to be tribal about cars. I tease my friends about their vehicle choices sometimes, and they tease me, but it's lighthearted as opposed to really some pretty vindictive stuff. That some of the messages that we've had coming our way in the last couple of weeks about our personal choices of vehicles have been really terrifyingly disturbing. All right. We've arrived at the hotel, says Winter. Yay for 250 kilowatt fast charging. So I won't be typing for a bit. He's arrived at his first hotel for the night, and hopefully he'll be back. Or he'll be back on the West Coast in about a week's time. Has anybody had a buyback in Minnesota? I don't know. Are the lemon laws good or bad in Oregon? I haven't checked. The lemon laws are fairly restrictive in Oregon. We are past lemon law status, I believe. But let's talk about why I think General Motors is just going to start buying cars back. Okay. So first of all, LG Energy is clearly struggling to produce batteries for the Kona EV. If LG Energy was able to produce the volume of cells needed and the battery packs needed to keep the Kona EV recall ticking along nicely, all of the batteries would have been already replaced. And I know, yes, global shipping is delayed. I know COVID is causing issues, but still, we would have seen all of those batteries replaced in a fairly short order. We haven't. It's still taking a while to go through. So then we have the issue of GM is now making its own batteries in America in its joint project with LG Energy, and none of those batteries have shown any signs of any problems, which means that the new battery facility in the US is working fine. GM's working on an Ultium battery facility. It's increasing its battery production setups. But in order to do a like-for-like swap with the 2017s through 2019s, it would either have to require LG Energy to produce new 60 kilowatt hour battery packs and ship them over to the US, or it would have to produce them itself in-house, which it could do. But obviously GM is focusing heavily on Ultium right now, and it makes more sense for GM to be focusing on Ultium. Now, people saying, well, okay, maybe you could just put the new 2021 battery packs in the 2017s through 2019s. The problem with that, as I understand it, is that those cars are going to have a slightly different battery management system. They're going to have potentially different connectors. I don't know if they do, but it's fairly common. You only have to look at the Nissan Leaf. The original Nissan Leaf, the 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, they all had different physical connections on the external on the battery box, and that meant that when Nissan was working on the Lizard batteries for those folks in Arizona, it took a long time. Nissan had to develop a new adapter kit to upgrade those batteries, and that was a bit of a headache. And I don't imagine GM wanting to do that, as it's forcing all of its money into the Ultium project now. Last someone said, David says they can't buy them back because they'll buy them back because you can't crap on Tesla if your own EVs are catching fire in customers' driveways. But as I said earlier, Tesla cars have been catching fire too. I think it is indicative of us trying to shove as much power into our battery packs as we possibly can. Batteries are still so new that there are still issues. We don't know. The auto industry, even Tesla, doesn't know as much about batteries as the internal combustion engine era knows about internal combustions, because they've had 100 years of producing suck, squeeze, bang, blow. And there's 100 collective years worth of knowledge from all of the automakers. But when it comes to battery vehicles, we've only got that much. Now, Tesla knows more than everyone else, but the amount of knowledge that we have as an industry in EVs is still pretty darn small. All right. But yeah, this is why I think GM is going to do a buyback rather than replacing the batteries. First of all, LG Energy is really hammered right now in terms of it trying to get batteries for the Kona EV. Second, GM is already focused on Ultium and doesn't really want to have to go back and make retrofit batteries for other vehicles. And third, GM made $3 billion in Q1 this year. Now I've been doing some math. We're talking about 70,000 Bolt EVs worldwide, maybe that might be affected. That figure I've heard lower and I've heard higher. But let's just say 70,000, nice round figure, right? And we're saying that most of the cars had an MSRP of about 40 grand, right? 70,000 times 40,000 is 2.8 billion. So GM made enough money during Q1 this year to write off 70,000 Bolt EV replacements. Just think about that for a second. And as Steve said, that would make the problem go away. You could do a mandatory buyback. Mandatory buybacks make sense because GM could take all of the potentially affected vehicles off the road, and they could replace every single one of those bolts with a new vehicle or give customers that money for the buyback. Now, that is a better PR move than taking forever to replace batteries. We've already seen what's happened with Hyundai and the Kona, right? The Kona EV has taken a big toll on the brand's reputation in the EV world because of that nightmare. And I think a mandatory buyback is what we're going to see. I think it's going to be on the order of what we saw with Volkswagen and Dieselgate. And here's the other reason why a buyback makes sense. I don't know how much GM is paying for batteries these days, but let's just say, I mean, I looked online earlier for a replacement pack for the Bolt, and I got figures between $12,000 and $18,000 for a replacement battery pack for a Bolt. Okay, let's take 15 grand as a middle of the road potential battery replacement cost for these cars. They were never intended to be replaced. The battery packs were designed to outlive the car. But let's just say 15 grand. Okay, we know that GM, like any other automaker, gets these battery packs at cost. So let's just say they are getting them at 12 grand, right? Material cost, maybe 10 grand, between 10 and 12 grand material cost. They then have to ship those batteries, which is expensive because shipping batteries is expensive. It's cheaper to ship the cars with the battery packs installed than it is to ship the battery packs alone, because if you ship the battery packs in the cars, they're already protected, they're already insulated, they're already as they would be on the road, so no additional safety protocols are required. But if you're shipping the battery pack alone, you have to put it in a box, you have to strap it down on a crate, you have to make sure that everything is electrically and mechanically sound with that battery. Nothing bad can happen to that battery, and you have to ship it. Shipping that battery is a costly and problematic process. It's a logistical nightmare. And then you're at the dealer, okay? And the dealer, I don't know how long it takes a battery swap, but I'm guessing 5 hours would be a good estimate. Maybe it's longer, maybe it's slightly less. But most dealerships, 5 hours, I'm guessing, a couple of people to work on that. The hourly rate for most garages is about $200 an hour, even if the people working on the car are not getting that, about $200 an hour. So if you say five hours at $200 per hour, that's $1,000. And then maybe there's two people working on the car, that's $2,000, right? So $2,000 to actually physically take the battery out and put the new one in, plus the shipping, plus the cost of the actual material cost of making the battery in the first place, and obviously shipping it all around the country. So at that point, you're looking at maybe 15 to 20 grand per car to replace the battery pack and put it in. Not in terms of actual material costs, but once everything's been done, especially if you offer the customer a loaner car for the afternoon or whatever, then you're left with a $15,000 cost per car to replace that car's battery pack and make all good. Now, remember those figures. That's a lot less than paying each person $40,000 to, MSRP or whatever, buy back their car. But we know that car companies have their gross automotive margins. We know that it doesn't actually cost Tesla it doesn't cost Tesla $50,000 to make a car. It costs maybe 30. And we know that the same is true for other automakers, right? In order for GM to have made $3 billion in Q1, we know that making a Bolt EV cannot cost it $40,000. It might be still turning a slight loss on that car, but even if it's fairly close to that $40,000 price tag, that $40,000 price tag is not what GM pays. It's not what the dealers pay to buy the car, and it's definitely not what GM pays, the material costs. So even if it's not making a huge profit on material costs, the markups of selling it to the dealer and then the dealer selling it to you is where you get that final price from. And so if GM is doing buybacks en masse and giving people credits to buy new cars, a couple of things happen. Either it can get rid of the middleman, pay dealers a set fee to swap the car out, or even if it is giving you the full MSRP and then you're going into the dealer and buying a new car, it's stimulating the economy of buying that new car. And the cars that have been recalled, they can either have their battery packs replaced offline, as it were. You know, car sits in a large field for 6 months while they get the battery packs ready for replacement. Then they can be put on the market again. All those cars are just broken down and used for parts and used for things. I know people are arguing about Tesla fires in the chat, which is just bonkers. Someone was saying there was a report of a Plaid fire the first week the cars were out. There was a Plaid Model S caught fire, and we haven't covered it, partly because we need to, drill down and understand it properly, but also because, it's not a lot of Tesla fans are incredibly toxic. There are some wonderful Tesla owners who I love and respect, but there are some very toxic people in Tesla YouTube land, and I am the brunt of a lot of their ire, and I'm frankly done with dealing with it. I'm more interested in helping people get into electric vehicles, regardless of what that vehicle is. If someone comes to me and says, I need an electric vehicle that can go 30 miles a day and can get me out of my crappy old Sonic car, then I go, great. Then if you like styling of Chevys, then you should maybe look at this $6,000 Chevy Spark. It'll keep you running. It'll keep you happy. Or maybe you can look at a Fiat 500 and that would be fine. Fiat 500e or even a Mitsubishi i-MiEV. Just remember that that what works for you doesn't work for everybody else. And not everybody else has an incredibly huge bank balance. I know I don't have a massive bank balance that I can just go out and drop 50 grand on a new Tesla Model Y. And there is a big price difference between a Tesla Model Y and a in the marketplace. And that's for a good reason. It's a premium car. Budget hatchback, which is something like the Bolt, and just acknowledge that different people spend money on different things, and that's okay. I choose to spend my money elsewhere on other things like my retirement and not building the house, but increasing the value of this house. We put solar panels on. We're doing a lot of landscaping in the garden. That's kind of sweat equity. Making the grass good, making the garden, fertile, working with the chickens and stuff like that. And that's okay too. Just because somebody doesn't buy the same car as you does not mean. Model S pliers, not Model S Plaid fires, no reports in the media. I've seen a couple of reports, David. It has happened. So yeah, so there we go. Mike says, I'm supposed to hear back from GM tomorrow about doing an MSRP swap or buyback from my 2019 Bolt EV. I'm hoping to get myself into a 2022 EUV. And that's pretty much where I am, willing to pay a bit more if required. And yeah, That's kind of where I'm at. Look, I would love, from an environmental point of view, I want to keep my Bolt because that's the smartest move environmentally. But I'm not willing to let my Bolt sit on the driveway and have it parked up right at the top of the road. And I'm convinced someone's going to go past my house in the next couple of weeks and figure out where we live because the Bolts are parked right road and you can see them. One of the reasons we liked this place is because the driveway kind of goes down and you can't see the cars from the driveway unless you're traveling in one direction. But now everybody is doing it. Some of you are also talking about Starlink. So right now I am not on Starlink. We cannot stream on Starlink. We are going to work. We need to buy a Edge Router X, which is something we're going to be buying. It will allow us to then have a better balanced internet signal. But right now, we do have some issues with our Starlink because we're in the middle of nowhere and we have some tall trees that we can't deal with. Why be stuck with someone else's mistake? Make GM hold on to it. Yeah, I think look, I tend to get attached to my cars. I know that sounds bad, but Artemis has been my car for 4 years and she's been brilliant. She's really been brilliant. We've had a couple of issues, like the ABS issues. Switching to an MSRP swap for a Bolt EUV is probably what we're going to do if it's available to us, because that's the smart move. I've heard several people say that my wife will not be able to get an MSRP. He bought her car used. If that is the case, then we'll probably just do a buyback on her car. And then we might just have to get a cheap and cheerful EV as a second EV for us for a while. Yeah, it's right, says Mike. It's not worth the possible fire or pain in the neck workarounds for charging. And Mike, you are totally right. So if GM doesn't offer us a buyback or a MSRP swap, we are not going to be happy. And I don't think... I think I'm correct in saying that far more Bolts were made than Kona EVs. And we've seen how long it's taken the Kona EV battery swap to happen. The other difference between Hyundai and GM with this is that I don't believe Hyundai has any battery facilities that it uses to make batteries for the Kona. I think it's still relying 100% on LG, and that obviously complicates things further. I'm just going to read some of these comments and then I'm going to go and cook some supper, and then I will work on the video for tomorrow, which is going to be I just cannot finishes. It's been a very troubling subject of autopilot, so that one's going to be an interesting one. I'm underwater on my 17 Bolt loan from a bad choice in my previous car. I'm going to have to charge overnight, park next to other cars. I should do a buyback, but it might not get me out of my loan. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm always an advocate for exploring your choices. Even if it's something you're not going to be able to do, ring up, find out, ask questions, see what happens. At the end of the day, I think that's probably the best advice I have. Just bummed that the orange color is no longer available. What do you do? Just walk back into your Chevy dealer and say you want a buyback. No, you have to call this number. Let me find it for you again. It is 1-833 382 4389. And I know that some of our mods are around. Maybe they can help me put this in the number. So it's 1-833 382 4389. There you go, that number. Someone said Ford is using SKI for the F-150, and you're right, it is. It's using SK Innovation batteries for the F-150, and that will make sense. All right, so that's thank you, Mike. That's how it translates. So 1-833, and then it's going to be 382 4389. I think I will probably end up getting. I want to be clear here. I have not lost faith in Chevrolet. I've lost faith in LG Energy. I don't think I'm ever going to buy an LG Energy car. And we talked about the other options there. I don't think I'm going to buy another LG Energy car brand new. But I am I am okay with if GM is willing to, sort this out and do buybacks, which it's already doing, then I think we have to give it some kudos there to stand behind it. And I think also I'm going to, again, this is not baseless claims, this is just me guessing. Pretty sure that most automakers have insurance policies against this kind of thing happening. Pretty sure that most, because let's face it, the insurance industry will insure you against anything. If you pay them enough money, they will insure you against anything. They won't insure YouTubers who want to take camera gear around the world anymore, but they will insure pretty much anything else if you pay them significant amounts of money. So I'm pretty sure that GM and other car companies have an insurance policy that is designed to deal with big recalls like this. So, right, Will says, don't you get bored driving the same car year after year? I make sure that the car I buy is the car I'm happy to buy and I'm happy to live with. I don't know about you, Will, but I can't afford to write off, 10, 15 grand of depreciation every year because I got bored. I mean, I don't know how much money you think YouTubers make, but it ain't that much. Like, I'm paying myself 20 grand a year. I'm very honest about this. I pay myself about between 20 and 30 grand a year. That's all I pay. Everything else that Transport Evolved makes goes back into the company, buying equipment and helping other members of the team and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't make enough money to write off that every year. That's pointless and it's wasteful, financially wasteful, and it's a bit financially irresponsible as well. I get to drive plenty of cars that are interesting and fun as part of reviewing cars. That's one of the reasons why I make videos about cars, is because I get paid effectively because of the ad revenue on the videos that I make. So we make a video car review. Nobody gives us money, like nobody pays us to review the car, but we review the car and then earn money when the review is watched, and Patreon obviously as well. So effectively I get paid to review cars. So yeah, I get to drive cool cars all the time. I get, that Porsche Taycan I drove a year or so ago, that was incredible. Would I want to own a Porsche Taycan every day? No, because I'd lose my license. So I have something a little bit more tame, which is the Chevrolet Bolt. Wouldn't it make more sense to buy 2 different types of cars instead of 2 of the same? Look, buddy, long term, we are going to be doing that. We are looking at a Ford F-150 as our work truck, I suppose. It's going to be using some family duties as well. But eventually, we're probably going to have a car and an F-150. And if it comes out, an Aptera, or an Aptera and an F-150, depending on what we decide to do. License Schmeisence. I almost read that as Schmeisence. Obviously, Shmee being a car YouTuber, that would have been funny. You're welcome for the upgrade and the other thing here. But anyway, that's where we're at. Okay, so we've started the process. We're going to get a call back at some point from someone saying, "Hey, you said you want your car to be bought back," and then we have to decide. We find out, I guess, what happens next. I'm going to go now. We have to finish our day. Everybody at the channel has been working very hard today. Winter especially, he's been driving across the US. I'm so impressed that he has managed to get as far as he has, which is phenomenal. But at the same point, he's got another 5 or 6 days to go. So poor Winter in that regard. It's going to be a while. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with more great, cool content. If you have final questions, let's see. To be fair, my Prius would fetch a good pie. See ya. Peace. Love you, vids. Thank you. Thanks for the update and live stream. I do not ever remember Tesla buying back cars, so you can't make that comparison to Tesla. The Model S Plaid Fire had a lot of questionable reports that did not make sense. No, travel insurance does not cover personal gear when you're carrying as much computer equipment that we carry. That is, that would be lovely, but no, sorry. you're a journalist. And anyway, that is it for today. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already, and the bell. We'll have more content. We'll have more updates on the bolts, as well as some more great content from myself, Winter, Kate, the rest of the TE family. Do the same for Transport Evolved Take 2 and Transport Evolved Shorts if you haven't yet. Those two channels are linked below. Thanks on behalf of the entire team go out to our Patreon supporters. Without you guys, we just wouldn't be able to make the videos that we do. Thanks to our $15 to $49 a month patrons. That is Andrew, Martin, Guido Drahoa, Brophy Wolf, Anonymous Freak, Raging Fellows, Carl Hodgson, Golden C, Laura Sanborn, Anthony Coates, Denny Hyde, Sean Ueda, and Tazla in the Gong. And our deepest gratitude to our $100 a month Patreon supporters. They are John Lyons, Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, JP Fagerback, Will Graylin, and Ian. Everybody says and Ian because that's just wonderful. We are still working on the t-shirt idea. Don't forget that you can also buy some Transport Evolved swag. Ironically, I am wearing this t-shirt today, which I think is very ironic. It is available in our swag store with the Evolve logo on it. You can get that too. Of exciting news stories and announcements coming up as well. Head over to the Discord chat if you want to continue the conversation. You can find that. There is a link below. I'll be back soon with more great content. Thanks for joining me. Keep evolving.